The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Kensington Palace as William sat in his private study, reading through official documents. The peaceful silence was broken by the gentle knock of his private secretary. Catherine had been feeling unwell for weeks, but the doctors assured them it was nothing serious. However, the grave expression on the secretary's face told a different story. Catherine was in the garden with their children when William found her. Charlotte was picking flowers while George helped his younger brother Louis catch butterflies. The scene looked perfect from the outside, but William could see the worry lines around Catherine's eyes that had appeared over the past month. She had been losing weight, and her usual bright energy seemed dimmed. The family doctor arrived that afternoon for what they thought would be a routine checkup. Dr. Matthews had been caring for the royal family for over a decade and had delivered all three of their children. His usually warm demeanor seemed different today as he examined Catherine thoroughly. The children were sent to play with their nanny, while the adults spoke in hushed tones. After 2 hours of tests and consultations, Dr. Matthews asked to speak with William and Catherine privately. They sat together on the blue velvet sofa in their private sitting room, Catherine's hand trembling slightly as William held it tight. The doctor's words came slowly, each one hitting them like a physical blow. The test revealed something they never expected to hear. Catherine stared out the window at her children playing on the lawn, their laughter carrying on the wind. She watched Charlotte teaching Louis how to properly hold a butterfly, her maternal instincts still strong even as her world crumbled around her. William's face had gone pale, but he maintained his composure, asking the practical questions that needed answers. The next few hours passed in a blur of phone calls to specialists and quiet conversations about treatment options. Catherine insisted on maintaining their normal routine with the children, not wanting them to sense that anything was wrong. That evening she read bedtime stories as usual, her voice steady despite the storm raging in her heart. As night fell over Kensington Palace, William and Catherine sat together in their bedroom, holding each other in silence. Tomorrow would bring meetings with oncologists and treatment plans, but tonight they simply needed to process the reality that their lives had changed forever. Catherine's diagnosis was serious, but there was hope if they acted quickly. The royal couple had faced many challenges since their marriage, from media scrutiny to public pressures, but nothing had prepared them for this personal battle. They made a pact that evening to fight this together, to stay strong for their children, and to face whatever came next with dignity and grace. Sleep came fitfully that night, filled with dreams of happier times and fears about an uncertain future. But even in their darkest moment, the love they shared provided a foundation of strength that would carry them through the difficult days ahead. The journey they were about to embark on would test every aspect of their relationship and their faith. Outside their window, the city of London continued its rhythm, unaware that within the palace walls, a young family was beginning the fight of their lives. The morning would bring new challenges, but it would also bring the first steps toward healing and hope. The morning light brought no comfort as William and Catherine prepared for the most difficult conversation of their lives. They had decided to tell the children first before the medical appointments began, and their schedule became consumed with treatments. Catherine had barely slept, spending the early hours planning exactly how to explain something so frightening to minds so young. George, at 10 years old, was becoming increasingly aware of adult conversations and the weight of responsibility that came with his position. Charlotte, 8, possessed an intuitive understanding that often surprised the adults around her. Little Louis, just 5, still lived in a world where his parents could fix anything with a hug and a kiss. They gathered in the family room after breakfast, the same space where they spent countless evenings playing games and watching movies together. Catherine sat between Charlotte and Louis on the sofa, while William pulled up a chair to face them directly. George sensed the seriousness and moved closer to his mother, his protective instincts already emerging. William began carefully, explaining that Mummy had been feeling unwell and that the doctors had found something that needed special treatment. Catherine's voice remained steady as she assured them that she would be getting the best care possible, but that there might be some difficult days ahead. Charlotte's eyes filled with tears immediately, while George tried to maintain his composure like the future king he was destined to become. Louis, not fully understanding the gravity, asked if Mummy would still be able to play football with him in the garden. Catherine's heart broke as she promised him that she would try her best, knowing that the upcoming chemotherapy might make even simple activities challenging. She pulled him close, breathing in the sweet scent of his hair, memorizing every detail of this moment. The family spent the rest of the morning together, answering questions and offering reassurances. They looked through photo albums, remembering happy times and making plans for the future. Catherine wanted her children to understand that despite the scary diagnosis, their family remained strong and united. By afternoon, it was time to inform the extended royal family. The phone call to William's father was particularly difficult, as King Charles had recently faced his own health challenges. The conversation was filled with long pauses and unspoken emotions. The king immediately offered every resource available, including access to the finest medical specialists in the world. Catherine's parents, Michael and Carol Middleton, arrived within hours of receiving the news. Carol's face was streaked with tears as she embraced her daughter, while Michael stood strong, offering practical support and unwavering love. They would become crucial pillars of strength in the months ahead, helping with childcare and providing emotional support. The palace's senior staff were briefed about the situation, with strict instructions about privacy and discretion. A small circle of trusted advisors began working on contingency plans for Catherine's official duties, understanding that her health must come first. The machinery of royal life continued, but everything was now viewed through the lens of this new reality. That evening, William and Catherine sat with their private secretary to discuss when and how to inform the public. They knew that speculation would begin once Catherine's appearances became less frequent. The decision was made to wait until they had a clearer understanding of the treatment plan before making any announcements. As the children slept, exhausted from the emotional weight of the day, William and Catherine walked through their private gardens. The roses Catherine had planted years earlier were beginning to bloom, a reminder that beauty could emerge even in difficult seasons. They talked about their fears, their hopes, and their determination to face this challenge together. The night sky over London seemed unusually clear, stars visible despite the city's glow. Catherine made a wish on the brightest star, the same way she had taught her children to do. Tomorrow would bring the first meeting with the oncology team, but tonight they held on to each other and the love that had sustained them through 12 years of marriage. Their faith would be tested in the coming months, but their commitment to each other and their family remained unshakable. The private wing of the London hospital became Catherine's second home over the following months. The medical team assembled for her care represented the finest expertise available, led by Professor Sarah Reynolds, a renowned oncologist whose gentle manner masked her fierce determination to beat this disease. The treatment plan was aggressive but offered the best chance for a complete recovery. Catherine's first chemotherapy session was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in March. She had spent the weekend with her family at their country home in Norfolk, soaking up precious moments of normalcy before the battle truly began. William insisted on accompanying her to every appointment, rearranging his official duties to be by her side through each treatment. The chemotherapy suite was surprisingly peaceful, with large windows overlooking a garden courtyard. Catherine brought her favorite blanket from home and a playlist of music that had special meaning to their family. William held her hand as the IV was inserted, both of them trying to stay positive despite their fears about the side effects they knew were coming. The first few sessions were manageable, with Catherine experiencing mild fatigue and nausea. She continued her morning walks in Kensington Gardens, though they became shorter as the weeks progressed. The children adapted to seeing their mother rest more often, learning to play more quietly and taking turns reading to her in the afternoons. By the fourth treatment, Catherine's beautiful hair began to fall out in clumps. She had prepared for this moment, but the reality was still shocking. Charlotte discovered her crying in the bathroom one morning, surrounded by loose strands. Without hesitation, her 8-year-old daughter climbed onto her lap and said she thought her mother looked like a warrior princess. Even without hair, the decision to purchase wigs was practical, but Catherine struggled with feeling like herself in them. She preferred soft scarves and hats, often choosing cheerful colors that reflected her determination to stay positive. The children helped her pick out different patterns, turning what could have been a sad experience into moments of connection and creativity. William watched his wife fight with a courage that both inspired and broke his heart. He took on more responsibilities with the children's daily routines, learning to braid Charlotte's hair and helping with homework while Catherine rested. His official engagements were reduced to only the most essential, and he declined several overseas trips. The sixth treatment hit Catherine particularly hard. She spent 3 days in bed with severe fatigue and nausea, unable to keep food down. Louis, too young to understand why Mummy couldn't play, became clingy and tearful. George and Charlotte rose to the occasion, entertaining their little brother and taking on small household tasks without being asked. Carol Middleton became a constant presence, arriving early each morning to help with breakfast and school preparations. She would stay late into the evening, ensuring Catherine had everything she needed and that the household continued to function smoothly. Her quiet strength became a source of comfort for the entire family. The medical team adjusted Catherine's treatment plan, finding ways to manage the side effects while maintaining the therapy's effectiveness. Professor Reynolds explained that Catherine's youth and overall health were advantages in her recovery, but cautioned that the journey would likely have more difficult days ahead. Despite the physical challenges, Catherine found unexpected sources of joy. Letters from well-wishers around the world began arriving after news of her illness became public. Children drew pictures of rainbows and flowers, while adults shared their own stories of survival and hope. The outpouring of love from strangers provided strength during the darkest moments. One evening, as autumn painted the trees around Kensington Palace in brilliant colors, Catherine sat by her bedroom window watching her children play in the garden below. Charlotte was teaching Louis how to rake leaves while George practiced his football skills nearby. The scene was so perfectly normal that it brought tears to her eyes. William found her there, noting the peaceful expression on her face despite the exhaustion visible in her posture. They talked about their gratitude for the simple moments that illness had taught them to treasure. The treatment was working according to the latest scans, offering hope that the end of this difficult chapter was approaching. The 8th and what they hoped would be the final chemotherapy session was scheduled for early November. Catherine felt stronger that morning, buoyed by encouraging test results and the knowledge that she had fought this battle with everything she had. The autumn months brought unexpected challenges that tested Catherine's resolve in ways the medical treatments never could. George began having nightmares about losing his mother, often waking up crying and needing reassurance that she was still there. His academic performance at school suffered as anxiety consumed his usually focused mind, and teachers reported that he seemed distant and worried. Charlotte, meanwhile, had appointed herself as Catherine's primary caregiver, bringing her water without being asked and drawing pictures of flowers to brighten her mother's bedroom. Her sensitivity meant she picked up on every subtle change in Catherine's condition, sometimes knowing about side effects before Catherine herself realized them. The weight of watching her mother suffer was evident in the way she clung to Catherine during their bedtime routines. Louis, though the youngest, surprised everyone with his resilience. He seemed to understand instinctively that his mother needed gentleness, replacing his usual energetic hugs with careful snuggles. He began leaving small gifts on her bedside table, a favorite toy, a pretty stone from the garden, or a drawing made especially for her. His innocent faith that everything would be okay became a source of strength for the entire family. The public announcement of Catherine's illness had brought an overwhelming response from around the world. Buckingham Palace received thousands of letters daily, many from children who wanted to share their own experiences with sick parents or grandparents. Catherine insisted on reading as many as possible, finding comfort in the shared human experience of facing illness with hope and love. One particularly touching letter came from a 7-year-old girl in Australia whose mother had survived breast cancer. She had drawn a picture of 2 women holding hands, with a rainbow overhead and the words, "Brave mums stick together," written in colorful crayon. Catherine had the drawing framed and placed on her bedside table, where it remained throughout her treatment. The media attention, while largely supportive, added pressure to an already difficult situation. Photographers with long lenses attempted to capture images of Catherine during her private moments, forcing the family to alter their routines for privacy. William's protective instincts intensified, and he worked closely with palace security to ensure his family could maintain some normalcy despite the public interest. Catherine's relationship with her own mother deepened during this period. Carol Middleton shared stories of her own mother's battle with illness, offering perspective and wisdom gained through experience. They spent hours together in Catherine's sitting room, sometimes talking about fears and hopes, other times simply enjoying comfortable silence while working on a jigsaw, puzzle, or watching old movies. The most difficult day came in October when Catherine collapsed during a family walk in Hyde Park. The children watched, in terror, as their father caught their mother and helped her to a nearby bench. Louis began crying immediately, while Charlotte tried to comfort him despite her own fear. George stood frozen, his young face pale with shock at seeing his strong mother so vulnerable. The episode was caused by dehydration and fatigue, easily treatable but emotionally devastating for the family. That night, after Catherine had been examined by doctors and declared stable, the family had their most honest conversation yet about fear, illness, and the possibility of death. Catherine answered their questions with characteristic honesty, while reassuring them of her fierce determination to recover. William struggled with his own emotions during this period, finding it difficult to balance his role as a supportive husband with his duties as a father who needed to remain strong for his children. He began working with a counselor who specialized in helping families cope with serious illness, learning techniques for managing anxiety and maintaining hope during uncertainty. The treatment protocols required frequent blood tests and scans, each one bringing a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Catherine approached these appointments with determined optimism, but William could see the fear in her eyes as they waited for results. Professor Reynolds became not just a doctor, but a trusted confidant who understood the unique pressures facing this very public family. By November, Catherine's hair had begun to grow back in soft, fine patches. Charlotte declared it looked like baby bird feathers, which made everyone laugh and somehow transformed what could have been a sad observation into something beautiful. The children took turns gently stroking their mother's head, marveling at the new growth that represented hope and healing. The community of support surrounding the family continued to grow. Friends from their university days reached out with offers of help, while William's military colleagues provided emotional support drawn from their own experiences with trauma and loss. Even former nannies and household staff sent messages of encouragement, creating a network of love that sustained them through the darkest days. Catherine's faith, which had always been private and personal, became a source of public inspiration as she spoke honestly about finding strength through prayer and meditation. Her vulnerability resonated with people facing their own battles, creating connections that transcended social boundaries and reminded everyone that suffering and hope are universal human experiences. December arrived with unexpected news that changed everything. Despite months of aggressive treatment and cautious optimism from the medical team, Catherine's latest scans revealed that the cancer had spread more extensively than anyone had anticipated. Professor Reynolds delivered the devastating update in her usual gentle manner, but the words hit like physical blows. The treatment options were now limited, and the focus needed to shift to comfort and quality of life. William felt the world stop spinning as the doctor explained that they were looking at months rather than years. Catherine sat perfectly still, her hand gripping his so tightly that her knuckles turned white. They asked the practical questions that needed answers, but both struggled to process a reality neither had truly prepared for despite months of uncertainty. The decision of how and when to tell the children became their most agonizing challenge. Catherine wanted to wait until after Christmas, hoping to give them one more magical holiday season filled with joy rather than sadness. She threw herself into Christmas preparations with an intensity that worried everyone around her, determined to create memories that would last her children a lifetime. The palace was decorated more elaborately than ever before, with Catherine personally overseeing every detail from the massive tree in the main hall to the stockings hung by the fireplace in their private quarters. She spent hours with the children making ornaments, baking cookies, and planning surprise gifts for their father. Her energy seemed to come from pure determination rather than physical strength. George, now more perceptive than ever, began to notice subtle changes in his parents' behavior. They held hands more often, spoke in hushed tones when they thought the children weren't listening, and both seemed to be fighting back tears during routine activities. His protective instincts toward his mother intensified, and he began spending more time reading to her and asking about her comfort throughout the day. Charlotte's artistic nature led her to create an entire gallery of drawings depicting their family adventures and happy memories. Without realizing it, she was documenting their life together in a way that would become precious beyond measure. She presented each new artwork to Catherine with pride, not understanding that her mother was memorizing every detail of these moments. Christmas morning arrived with fresh snow covering the grounds of Sandringham Estate. Where the family had retreated for the holidays, Catherine wore her favorite red dress and managed to maintain her usual enthusiasm as the children opened their presents. She had written personal letters to each of them, to be opened on future birthdays and milestones, though they knew nothing of these hidden gifts. The extended royal family gathered for Christmas lunch, and Catherine's courage in maintaining normalcy despite her pain inspired everyone present. She participated in the traditional walk to church, supported discreetly by William, and smiled warmly for the cameras that captured what would unknowingly be her final Christmas with her children. By early January, Catherine's condition had deteriorated noticeably. She tired more easily and required pain medication that left her drowsy for much of the day. The time had come for the conversation they had been dreading since December. William and Catherine spent hours planning exactly what to say, consulting with child psychologists about the best approach for explaining death to young minds. They gathered the children in the same family room, where they had first explained the diagnosis nearly a year earlier. This time, Catherine's voice shook as she explained that the medicine wasn't working as well as the doctors had hoped, and that she might not have much more time to spend with them. The silence that followed was deafening. George, trying to be brave, asked direct questions about what would happen next. Charlotte began crying immediately, climbing into her mother's lap and refusing to let go. Louis, still not fully comprehending, asked if Mummy would still be there when he woke up tomorrow. Catherine promised him that she would try her best to stay as long as possible. The following weeks were filled with precious moments that everyone knew were numbered. Catherine read bedtime stories with renewed intensity, made recordings of lullabies for future nights when she wouldn't be there, and spent individual time with each child sharing memories and expressing her love in ways they would carry forever. She worked with William to plan their future, discussing everything from birthday celebrations to wedding days she wouldn't witness. They recorded video messages for significant milestones, created photo albums with personal notes, and established traditions the children could continue in her memory. Every conversation was both heartbreaking and necessary. The public began to sense the gravity of the situation, as Catherine's appearances became increasingly rare. The palace issued carefully worded statements about her condition, and the nation began to prepare for a loss that would be felt far beyond the royal family. On a quiet February morning, as frost covered the windows of Kensington Palace, Catherine called her family to her bedside. Her breathing had become labored during the night, and everyone understood that the time they had been dreading was approaching. William held her hand while the children gathered around, their innocent faces reflecting confusion and fear but also profound love. The morning light filtered softly through the curtains of Catherine's bedroom as the family gathered around her bed on that final day. She had requested that the room be filled with her favorite flowers, white roses from the garden she had tended for so many years. The children sat close to their mother, holding her hands and sharing quiet words of love that would echo in their hearts forever. Catherine's voice was weak but clear as she spoke to each of her children individually. To George, she emphasized his future responsibilities, but reminded him that kindness would always be more important than duty. She told Charlotte that her artistic gifts would bring joy to many people, and encouraged her to paint the world with the same love she had always shown her family. To little Louis, she promised that she would always be watching over him, and that he should never stop believing in magic and wonder. William sat beside his wife of 12 years, their fingers intertwined as they had been on their wedding day. She whispered words meant only for him, expressions of gratitude for their life together and confidence that he would guide their children through the difficult days ahead. Their love story, which had begun in university halls and flourished through royal duties and parenthood, was approaching its earthly conclusion with the same grace and dignity that had defined their entire relationship. As the afternoon sun began to set, Catherine's breathing became more peaceful. The children sang her favorite lullaby, the same song she had hummed to them countless times during bedtime routines and moments of comfort. Their young voices filled the room with pure love, creating a soundtrack of devotion that seemed to lift everyone present above their grief into something transcendent. Professor Reynolds, who had become like family over the months of treatment, confirmed what everyone already knew in their hearts. Catherine passed peacefully at 6:47 p.m., surrounded by the people she loved most in the world. The quiet that followed was profound, filled not with emptiness but with the overwhelming presence of love that death could not diminish. William gathered his children close as they said their final goodbyes to their mother. They placed letters they had written for her in her hands, along with small mementos that represented their individual relationships with her. Charlotte's final drawing showed their family together under a rainbow, with Catherine depicted as an angel with beautiful wings. The news of Catherine's passing was released to the world the following morning, triggering an unprecedented outpouring of grief and love from every corner of the globe. Flowers began appearing outside Kensington Palace within hours, growing into a sea of color and remembrance that stretched for blocks. People who had never met Catherine felt her loss personally, testament to the way she had touched lives through her genuine warmth and dedication to others. The children showed remarkable strength in the days that followed, supported by their father's unwavering presence and the extended family who rallied around them. George understood his role in comforting Charlotte and Louis, displaying wisdom beyond his years. Charlotte expressed her emotions through art, creating a memorial book filled with happy memories of their mother. Louis asked innocent questions about heaven that somehow brought comfort to the adults struggling with more complex grief. King Charles, despite his own sorrow at losing a beloved daughter-in-law, provided steady support to his son and grandchildren. Carol and Michael Middleton became daily presences in the children's lives, ensuring continuity and love during their most vulnerable time. The network of support that had sustained the family through Catherine's illness now became their foundation for healing. The funeral service at Westminster Abbey brought together world leaders, celebrities, and ordinary citizens who felt compelled to honor a woman who had exemplified grace under pressure. William's eulogy spoke of Catherine's courage, her devotion to family, and her belief that love could overcome any challenge. The children participated in the service according to their individual comfort levels, their dignity inspiring all who witnessed their strength. In the months that followed, William established a foundation in Catherine's memory, focused on supporting families affected by serious illness. The children became involved in age-appropriate ways, finding purpose in helping others who faced similar struggles. George showed particular interest in the foundation's work with young people, while Charlotte created artwork that was auctioned to raise funds. The anniversary of Catherine's passing was marked not with sadness alone, but with celebration of the life she had lived and the love she had shared. The children released balloons into the sky above Kensington Palace, each carrying a message to their mother. William spoke about how Catherine's influence continued to guide their daily decisions and shape their understanding of what truly mattered in life. The public's love for Catherine's memory remained strong years later, with the Catherine Foundation becoming one of the most supported charities in the United Kingdom. Her legacy lived on through her children, who carried forward her values of compassion, service, and authentic connection with others. The tears that had flowed during her silent farewell had been transformed into lasting love that would continue to move and inspire millions worldwide for generations to come.